Miss Damschroder only has 20 minutes with us, so let us begin. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to CRWS. We are here with Laura Damschroder. We're here to discuss racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. This is not some sort of battle of wits discussion or debate or anything like that. We are simply victims of racism, non-white people, discussing racism and white supremacy with a person classified as white, seeking help and solutions to how we can eliminate this problem. So that's my little short intro, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Smoky Damages, our Helen B, if you want to get us started with questions. Well, I'll get us started with the first question. Laura Damschroder, are you a white person?
Yes, I am.
All right. And how do you know you are a white person?
I've been told that. I know that I am in a privileged position. I identify as a white body. So kind of using Resma Menakem's conceptualization.
Hello, Miss Laura. I'm the one that invited you to this meeting. Hello.
Hi. Yes, I'll just say that I'm not sure what I really got into and stepped into here. I really do and am open to having dialogue. I listened to some of the open recordings that you did on Twitter. I'm kind of new to all this, the Twitter space and doing live streaming. Never participated in anything, like this. And I'm in the middle of my workday, so I've got, lots of people crowding my calendar, but I really want to, this is a priority. So I just caught your message, pressing the link. Thank you for the back and forth and finally making this work. And I know it's very last minute.
So what's your definition of racism, white supremacy?
My definition is basically racism is a mix of being in a position of power or privilege and seeing another person just because of the color of their skin as being less than. And there are different levels of racism. There's, of course, individual racism that if I personally, see you as other and less than, versus the systems and structures that perpetuate racism and the systems that, I've certainly grown up with that catch me in its web through, and I'm just actually looking at, one definition is just that they're mutually reinforcing systems and structures that reinforce discrimination in terms of beliefs and values and distribution of resources, opportunities.
And what age did you learn about racism, white supremacy, and what do you fear most?
Was that last word fear most? What do I fear most?
Yes, what do you fear, and at what age did you learn about racism, white supremacy?
I have to say that at what age? Well into adulthood, really, as a personal, visceral thing that I have to look within myself
Are you saying
And
that you learned about racism, white supremacy at an adult age?
yes, isn't that, it's awful. Yes, white supremacy, certainly. When you look back at the history we're taught in school, and I'm talking, that going to school and the growing up, young elementary school in the 60s, high school in the 70s, living in a white, completely white community and not learning the history.
And what do you fear?
What do I fear? I fear doing it wrong right in this moment of time, in time. I fear I guess I fear just never changing.
At what age
Never,
did you learn? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Continue.
I was never getting to the point of knowing what it's like to live in a world of freedom and liberation for everyone and everything that that means.
At what
So,
age did you learn that you were white?
You know, there was an incident in elementary school. We had one one Black family in our community. And they had a swimming pool, which I thought was really cool. And I was standing with a group of kids, and this was a boy and I'm a girl. And I asked the other boys, have you gotten to swim in his swimming pool? And they looked at me like, what? And I said, well, why wouldn't you want to swim in his pool? And they just were like, it was the most disgusting idea they ever heard of. And I did not know what to do with that. And I just remember that. And I remembered feeling it emotionally, like a punch in my belly, but didn't know what to do with it.
Hello, Miss Laura. What age was you when that happened?
That was perhaps 4th grade.
Sorry, what age is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe about age 10. So it would have been about 1969 or 70.
You see, when you use the word privilege, as in white privilege, to describe racism earlier, do you think what do you mean when you say white privilege?
Oh man, I get to buy a house in any neighborhood I want. I have doors that are more open to me, career-wise, moving about in the world wise. I mean, I could go on and on.
Okay, how do people who are classified as white receive those privileges?
We receive them from the systems and structures that have been in place since the origin of this country.
Who's responsible for those systems?
We all are. I mean, I can say, oh, well, I'm not responsible for the original, the initial codes that came out in Virginia to keep, Black.
I mean the color classification of the people who are responsible for the systems.
Oh, white, and male.
Can
How-
you have those privileges without that system in place?
That's a good question. I would say yes and no. Certainly no, not to the extent and the depth that we have with the systems. If we did not have the systems, then it's down to, human interaction on a individual level. If we never had privilege ingrained so deeply in our systems.
So are you saying you
Laws.
can have white privilege without a system of racism, white supremacy? Yeah, I mean, are you saying that that doesn't cause those privileges?
Wait, if I understand what you're saying, the systems have created my white privilege.
Right. Okay,
I
that's what I'm
think.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So
I mean, it's a
so
made
to
up,
describe,
it's a made up construct, right? It's a socially made up construct. And it's insane.
Due to the
Made
limited
up by
time,
who?
yeah, due to the limited time, to make sure everyone gets a time
Made
to
by
ask
white,
questions.
yeah, made by white people in power, right? White people in power.
So, okay, awesome. I love that you said that. Well, appreciate that you said that. I love Sun exists currently. But so is it more correct to call your position, instead of saying privilege, is it more correct to say it's a position of power, Ms.
It
Laura?
is, yes, privilege isn't a strong enough word. It is white supremacy. It is built in, baked in white supremacy. And because of my skin, I have power automatically conferred.
And when did you realize you had this power? At what age would you?
I'm embarrassed to admit, well into my 50s,
And you are currently
60s,
and
in
currently
the
how old are
last 10
you?
years. So I've been on a journey,
Wait, 1
probably.
second, Ms. Laura.
Oh, go
Currently,
ahead,
how
go
old
ahead.
are you?
I am 62.
Okay.
So maybe I should give myself some credit and say 40s, my 40s.
So it took until you were 40 to realize that because you were not white, you were treated differently and had power.
I could see that, I could see the dynamics, but I didn't understand the full force and source.
Okay, so as you were growing up, how did you view other white people treating non-white people?
I lived in mostly white communities. I went to mostly white schools. Looking back now, I realize kind of how segregated people were. It's not like we had signs, whites only, but that there was kind of an unspoken segregation. And now I lost track of your question, sorry.
No, I said, how did you view other white people treating non-white people? Like, did you witness any non-white people being mistreated on the basis of their color?
I mean, of course, in the media and television, in real life, I think it was more micro and not overt in my own personal experience.
Micro meaning What exactly?
Meaning like the swimming pool incident. Of course, that hit me, and I knew that there was something about that, and I was so young. But there may be comments and behaviors that were not obvious at the time, and so they just kind of went right over my head. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I can't even think of examples.
That's fine. Did you ever notice or observe anyone in your family unit making any racist comments about non-white people? Any jokes that you can
Oh,
recall?
yes,
Can
yes.
you share some experiences, please?
I'm trying to, I have family members who to this day, we just don't, because they know my stance, and so they avoid the whole topic around me. But one recent example is an uncle who was talking about their local high school, and he's in his 70s, so he's got maybe grandchildren that go to the school. And he made some kind of comment about, well, those Black kids, they're making trouble. I don't know, there was some kind of altercation at the high school, and just making those kinds of remarks. And I just looked at him, and I don't know exactly what I said, but I know that he knew that I was not happy with his remark, and that was not appropriate.
Do you still celebrate holidays with this person, Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc., with this uncle?
I don't see him very often. He's actually not in very good health. I have not cut him out of my life, but on the other hand, when people make comments like that in my presence, I will either signal or explicitly question their statement.
What do you mean
And
when you say signal?
I will either give them a look and they know and they'll backtrack immediately, or I will say something. What are you basing that on? Have you considered XYZ? Have you considered why that might be?
You see, when you said you had the swim pool incident, etc., and you talked about your family, is it true to say then that you had experiences growing up where you realized that some of your family members were practicing racism?
Oh, yes. And I think that's why one reason it took me so long to realize, because it was like the water I swam in, and I didn't realize the water I was swimming in. And and it wasn't overt, like my parents didn't, they weren't, oh my gosh, it's subtle. It's subtle, it's not subtle. It's we lived outside of Detroit with the riots, and of course, there are riots, and why are they doing that to their neighborhood? And Detroit is unsafe because of those people. So it would be comments like that. And then we moved farther away from Detroit when I was young, when I was in elementary school. And I know that it was at least in part because, it was a bigger house, but also in part because it would be farther away from Detroit. By the way, that book that you had up, I noticed the reference that it was referenced last night in the chat. Yeah, that one. So I've got it on my list to get.
So then it's accurate to say then that you realized probably whilst you were growing up that white people and Black people were definitely treated differently, right?
Oh, yes. Looking back now, it's really awful the extent to which that was the case and how blind I was to it.
if you realized it, how could you at the same time be blind to it?
That is a really good question. How can I be blind to it? How could I just say that I was blind to it? Oh, well, maybe this is what I really mean. What I really mean is,
yeah, I
could
guess I'm just trying to
see it.
understand, because you know when you said you it was only when you got to about 40 you realized. So I'm just
Mhm.
trying to, but in view of what you said, obviously you realized it quite a long time. So I just wanted to get a bit of like clarity from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that at the time of growing up, I felt uncomfortable, but I didn't know why, and I didn't know what the source of it was. I didn't understand, like when I saw people of color being treated disparagingly or with assumptions of lesser than, like, of course they don't work, or, of course they don't have, of course they're poor because they don't work kind of meme. I would feel the wrongness of the statement, but not realize, oh, I can only say that looking back now. But at the time, I didn't know what the source of that. I don't know. I didn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling.
Okay. Just in another bit, just for in the interest of clarity as well. Before, when you were talking about racism, you mentioned white men. Why did you mention white men?
Oh, I mentioned white men because they're the ones historically who have made the laws, but white women definitely have had a role as well in perpetuating and living within that system, including myself. Even today, when you look at lawmakers, they're predominantly men. Not that women are clean, but that those were the people who were in positions of power.
Do you think that white women have an equal role in practicing racism, white supremacy? Or do you think
Yes.
white men are? Oh, you think they do? Okay,
Well,
give us some examples.
Current, or, I mean, every white body in this country has a role in perpetuating white supremacy.
Okay, when you say white body, are you just talking about white people?
Yes.
Just for clarity. Okay, great. How as a victim of racism, white supremacy, right? How would you advise me to look at white men as more racist than white women, or do you think I should look at just white people in general as potential racists and as having like equal culpability in the practice of racism?
I think when you're looking at individuals, it's equal culpability. But when we're talking about the structures, the systems, the legal frameworks that were put into place, it's the people who had positions of power who put those in place.
Okay, so in terms of people who maintain it today on this planet, should I, as a victim of racism, be separating that out and thinking white men are more racist than women, or women are or less? Right. Okay. So you both play an equal role.
For yeah. I don't.
Yeah. That's why I just wanted to get that clarity.
Yeah.
So I mean, should I be looking at just white people as being racist and not really differentiating between white females and white men?
Yes.
Alrighty.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask a couple of questions from the chat. This is from Miss Christine Williams. To you, Miss Damschroder, do you have any children and what are their ages?
They are two daughters and their ages 27 and 30.
All right, and that is all the questions from the chat currently.
How seriously do you think Black people collectively should be treating racism on this planet today?
Very seriously.
What do you recommend that Black people, victims of racism, white supremacy, do about racism?
I hate to put the burden on your community because the burden is on us to fix and dismantle the systems that oppress and continue to oppress. I think
Okay,
the extent to which you're willing to be in dialogue, the extent to which you're willing to, to be in dialogue with us, it's a long road to change culture as well as the laws and structures that got us to where we are.
A long road to change cultures. Are you saying then that white culture is racism?
White culture, well, it's white supremacist culture. Yes.
Okay, so when I asked you before about what do you recommend that Black people do about racism, you said you didn't want to put the burden on Black people. And then you mentioned dialogue. Do you recommend that Black people do anything else apart from dialogue with white people?
I don't know. I don't know what to, I just feel really reluctant to tell you what you need to do. For one thing, I don't know what the answer to that is. And for another, I feel like it's shifting responsibility.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get your opinion, really. Okay, from the other side, how seriously do you think white people should take racism today?
Very seriously.
Like, how much of a priority?
I think it should be top, other than the impending climate disaster, which actually is kind of intertwined anyway.
Well, why do you think white people should take racism, white supremacy, solving it very seriously?
Why? Because it's wrong, because it's hurtful to everyone. And I'm not putting our hurt, I don't want to put our hurt equal to your hurt, but it is, this is really hard to articulate. What I can say is that I just feel very strongly that this is an absolute priority. And yeah, I mean, I can tell you the things that I'm doing, but I'm just one person.
Is racism white supremacy?
Wait, go ahead, Ms. Helen, and then I'm gonna ask some questions from the chat, and then you can take over Mr. Damages.
Is racism white supremacy? Is it global? And what are the things? Can you list the things that you're doing to help dismantle eliminate the system of racism and white supremacy?
Yeah, so I just want to, I've got my eye on the clock and I have a 3 o'clock meeting, which is in 2 minutes now. The things that I'm doing are, first of all, working in my local community, being an active part of protests, of shaking up our own police department, running for office. My husband is now council member of our local city council. Our police chief just resigned. Things are changing for the better around, and this all kind of came out of Black Lives Matter protests that were led by youth in this city, and we're kind of have continued to carry that torch forward and trying to sustain the urgency that people felt in the summer of 2020. I and about a half a dozen other people are out on the corner, the main street corner in our little town, with signs, you know, street activism, literally, to just keep it front and center and visible. Within my work as an implementation scientist, really centering more strongly issues of equity and structural recognizing structural racism and integrating it into our frameworks, but then at the same time, and most importantly, pointing to, trying to anyway, point toward researchers who have been doing the deep work for decades.
And is it global?
Just-
Is racism and white supremacy global?
I think so. There may be pockets of places where it's not as rife, but I hear of, you know, countries in South America, in other places where there's certainly, you know, colorism, where, you know, darker skin versus lighter skin. And I don't know if that's all transported, exported from the US, but the US has definitely been a universal master at codifying racism. It's kind of intertwined with colonialism, which is, you know, touched so many parts of the world. But
Laura, can you answer with a yes or no if racism and white supremacy is a global system? Just to look for lack of
I guess I don't. How about I don't know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I could say yes. I could say yes in the sense that our especially globalization is definitely with, you know, kind of seems to be built on white supremacist structures and advantages. So
just in the interest
really
of time,
heavy into this, but yeah,
just in the interest of time, right? I just want to get in one last question. Then, what's the difference between a white person and a racist?
maybe none, because, well, I mean, I have to think about the definition of racism.
We have a host who hasn't been able to ask a question. Kwaku, Laura, if you have time.
Go ahead.
Greetings.
Let's do one more. I'm reluctant to cut out, but I really do need to.
Greetings.
Mika,
Thanks for
hello.
taking my question. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Yeah, so my question is, earlier you mentioned when we talked about white privilege and white power, you mentioned that white privilege wasn't accurate and you felt white power was more accurate. So my question is, why do white people continue to use the term white privilege even though it's not accurate?
I think we just don't really understand the meaning of those words and the implications of those words. There are some people, depending on the level of awareness and self-awareness, that are only just learning the privilege piece of it, let alone the power.
You said, sorry to cut you off. You said you don't understand the words. Are you talking about white privilege or white power?
No, I think that there are people who don't really understand the meaning and the implications of using the word privilege versus power.
Who would those people be?
A lot. I mean, I don't have names, but I'm just
Like-
offering that up.
I'm saying it like color classification. Are you saying like non-white people don't
Oh,
understand that?
I'm
or
sorry,
people?
white people. White people.
So white people don't understand what white power means?
I don't think they think of themselves as being privileged or empowered.
I see. Okay. I just have some quick ones, so I'll make them short. In terms of power on the planet, is there any racial classification on the planet that has more power than white people?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of anywhere on the planet in which white people are being subjugated or have ever been subjugated?
I'm not aware. So now can I re-answer your global question? That would be yes.
Okay.
What's the best and most efficient way to stop white people collectively from practicing racism, white supremacy?
I don't know. If there were a quick collective way of doing that, then wouldn't we have done it? Is it just a matter of will?
Would you are you a racist?
Am I a racist? I think by virtue of my white body, yes.
Okay, what are some of the ways that you practice racism?
Well, I have to go into my meeting, but with the ways that I practice racism, I have a nice house in a nice neighborhood, for example. How did I get that?
Yeah, not privileges, not what you receive as a result of a system. I mean, how do you practice? I mean, it has to be practiced, right? So how do you practice racism?
By perhaps continuing to interact with people, I'm in a white community. How do I practice? I have to think about that.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to.
No worry. We will, hopefully we can do a part 2. But
you guys are tough. I just want to say that it's.
Yeah, do you know what? Hopefully you can come back and we can kind of continue it because I think it's important to ask these questions, obviously.
Yeah, we have a number of questions from the chat. It doesn't seem like we'll have time to get to due to your time constraints.
I think hopefully let me look tonight. I mean, I could re-engage this evening, but not until about 7:30 p.m.
Is that Eastern time? Or
Eastern time, yes. Eastern Standard Time.
Maybe tomorrow or in the near future. But if folks are able today, we will see. But because
Friday's a possibility too.
Also, I would like to throw in if you could get some of your other white people to come answer some of our questions, that would be constructive.
That would be also helpful.
That would be, yeah, I can reach out to a few people and that would take longer, to set up, but I'll try to do that. I'll do that.
You're sending out a tweet, hey, discussion on race and white supremacy Friday,
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Okay, and thanks for answering some of the questions as best as you could, right? So that'd be great if you could come back and we can do a part 2.
I feel
Thanks.
I've fallen far short. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. So we're gonna just take some time to discuss the conversation, and I'm just gonna read the chat. The chat's very constructive. Geez.
Is the white guest still in the room?
Negative.
No.
She has exited the stage.
Is this are we recording the discussion as well?
Oh, that was a plan. So a Kanfu Yao had a really epic question I wish I could have asked. And he says, can you ask the guest what does she think should be done with non-white Black people if she doesn't know to advise us, if she can't advise us on what to do? And I was like, well, that would have been an interesting question for sure, but going with, what was said and just the way she uses words, I don't think her answer would have been that honest or that constructive. She did say some really interesting things though in regards to all white people being racist, and that could just be just promoting confusion. I don't think we should, with confidence say every single white person is a white supremacist. We should remain, codified in a manner of just being suspicious of all white people who are able to practice racism, just so we can avoid any errors and having to prove that a white person is a racist, which is very, very hard to do, especially if no other white person / suspected racist is, wanting to help us to provide that evidence. So really interesting. I do hope she comes back for a part 2. It would be nice to actually have more time with her. Yeah. I must admit, I do think she could have attempted to be honest, but I don't know, maybe just I don't know. She could have been attempting to be honest on some of the questions, but perhaps fear, perhaps the lack of will to really just get to the truth of things is there. I may be in error.
Frequently when we talk about if I talk to white people about racism, frequently it's about the conversation shifts onto what they receive. Like, I mean, when she said she had a nice house, etc., and I had to kind of, steer her back to talking about what she did to practice it, right? I always find that, like, even to even take like one example, like brief example, the Carl Rittenhouse situation. There's lots and lots of talk about him as an individual and etc. and what he received in terms of getting, his lack of punishment, etc. So that would be looked upon as a quote unquote privilege or virtue of the fact of him being white on this planet today. But then frequently the conversation is not about how did he receive that, right? What about the groundswell of white people all around the globe that were, with him and helping him to do that, practicing racism in a way that he could literally get away with murder, right? And with no punishment. And the judge in the case, the jury, etc., 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 the whole system that allowed them to do it. And it's just frequently when you talk to white people, it's always, most of the time, there's a tendency for them to kind of obfuscate a bit and talk about, yeah, I received this and I received that, and great, but not what they actually, as individuals, do to maintain and practice the system. So yeah, just I guess par for the course, and no change there today with the questions, I think. Very expected response.
Yeah, I did notice at the end just the white shame, like, I did feel like I fell in short, just trying to get that out, sneaking that white guilt. I think that's a
05. What do you think of the comment? You guys are tough. What do you make of that comment?
Yeah, actually, Miss Williams just commented on that from the chat. She says, "Tough questions from the panel chat, asking constructive questions." Yeah, and yeah, I relay that mentality that non-white people asking constructive questions to a white person. Yeah, to a white person, that's tough / coded as aggression. But it's
I was thinking when she said you guys are tough, I was kind of decoding that as she meant you guys seem a little bit less confused about what's happening to you. Yeah,
exactly.
Like the black people I'm used to talking to are not so tough. In other words, wow, you guys are really usually just completely bamboozled by, I don't know, a kind voice, a kind sounding voice and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. This interesting word there, that phrase about, oh, you guys are tough. I don't think we're tough at all. I think we're still quite confused, but just a little less confused. It's just, it's just interesting phrase.
Actually, you guys were pretty nice to her, considering some of the other chats and stuff we've had with people. You guys were very calm and collective, and
I didn't straightforward question.
Yeah, it wasn't. There was no. I mean, this was a very relaxed situation. Like we were sitting on the couch talking.
That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be.
Cordial.
That's exactly how it's supposed to be. Just learning information from people who are classified as white. What does it mean to be white on this planet today? It's the best way to be.
Yeah, but I heard a CR scientist say, they're already on edge. So, but yeah, I'm just going to read some more gems from the chat. Still Learning says, being harmed daily by the system of racism and white supremacy makes the constructive use of time and energy hard for non-white people. I don't suspect that white people are made uncomfortable by the system of racism and white supremacy. I concur. And then Still Learning also says, white privilege is a candy coating, which makes it easier to swallow the benefits obtained from practicing racism, the harm of people. Then only people identifying as white can practice racism, and that's just kind of racist logic right there. And I think Still Learning also mentions that how she's referred to herself as a white and white body, and he says her skin is most likely not white like snow. So what part of her body is white? And I don't know what the chat, you guys can see it, but also her Zoom name thing, she had her name, and then she had her, and then she had white body.
All these pronouns.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So I really wanted to get into like the Yugu mind. I want to ask her questions about skin, but I have to say that for part 2, because I hated having I have to leave any moment now. I hated having that over our heads. So
I know the time constraint thing is always and I sense some contradiction.
Straight pattern.
Pattern. Exactly. I sensed some contradiction in the beginning when she was talking about I didn't know until I was 40, And then as
Oh,
we started
yeah.
to explore it a little bit more, then she started saying, well, when I was younger, this happened,
Yeah.
and then that happened, and then my family was practicing racism. So really, you did know, and you was quite aware. But you try to say you went through almost your entire adult life, or middle of your adult life anyway, when you're 40, and then that's when I just think it's a contradiction, but I could be
Yeah.
wrong.
So she was using cognitive dissonance to say that she didn't really have an understanding of what was going on around her. So
Right.
she knew it was there, but
She never acted on it.
she didn't know it was there.
Yeah, like I pretty much while she was talking, there's an old interview Gus had, and he had interviewed Debbie Irvin, to where this woman wrote a book saying that she didn't know about racism until she was in her 40s or 50s, something like that. So like I was getting those type of vibes while she was talking. So I just wanted to point that out.
Exactly. Do you know, funny you pointed out, that's exactly the vibes I was getting. And that's one of my favorite interviews from the Cows, Debbie Irving interview. If anyone hasn't heard that, definitely check that out. One of my favorite interviews. And and with all the what do you call it? I don't know. I got the vibe of is either discomfort or deception or both. Discomfort, deception, or both. And yeah, so I'll just leave it to people who listen back to the recording, see which one you think.
Well, your mic is kind of messed up.
Yeah, your mic cut out for a tiny bit there.
Yeah, like even with the question where she learned about racism, she said basically she was 9 or 10. Then she said that she didn't know about racism until she was 40. That's very inaccurate. That's not basically just not being true. Something like that.
Exactly. That's discomfort, deception, or both. That's what I say. That is.
Yeah.
Or an attempt to try to make us feel better about her.
That too.
She hit us with a lot of deceit and confusion in the very beginning by calling us, but by referring to us as like some sort of community, by referring to by even implying that Black people have a community, and I mentioned that just to segue into this soundbite. Everyone should go to producejustice.com to pick up your copy of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept by Neely Fuller Jr. So I'm going to play this soundbite. Go pick up your copy.
Mr. Fuller, could you explain to the non-white listening audience,
also,
and in particular to the Black audience, why it is
when
illogical
Helen asked her the question
and outright silly for Black people to use the words "the Black community" when there is no such thing at all whatsoever under a prison system called white supremacy, sir?
You named it just then, using that word, prison, that term, prison system.
Oh, damn.
A prison system.
Am I okay?
It's not a community. Yeah, it's a prison.
Okay, all right.
So you say, well, it's a community.
Play the clip, when Helen asked her about what did she fear, I don't think she answered the question because she said that she was doing something wrong, but she never explained what she was doing exactly wrong. So.
Correct. She did not answer the question.
Also, I thought, I think Helen asked the question, but what she was doing to counter racism or to
eliminate the exact and dismantle.
Eliminate racism. Yes. And she said a lot of things, but the one that I remember most was her saying her husband running for office or something like that. And I don't understand how that helps to eliminate racism. A white person getting a job and where they can perhaps practice racism to greater effect. I don't understand how that eliminates racism. So that was very confusing for me. I think she said she runs for office or she does stuff in her community, not being very specific. That.
Yeah, very telling. Definitely something to jot down for our notes for next time.
Yeah, something else to jot down for the notes I'd suggest as well. When asked about what she's doing to counter the system, she went into a massive spiel about, and it was just a lot. What I just think it was just like just buckets and buckets, right, of words and stuff, and she used lots and lots of different types of phrases, which I wasn't even able to write down quickly enough. So, if there is a part two, I definitely want to listen back to the recording and challenge her on some of the things that she was saying, and especially when she was talking about colonialism and just things she was talking about. I can't remember the phrases that she was using about things that she was doing. She was talking about different systems and stuff and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it'd be very helpful to go back and listen to exactly what she said and then ask her what she means by the terms that she used in terms of what she's doing to counter the system.
Exactly. So now I'm going to play the clip because she did refer to us as a community, non-white people. We're not, no such thing, especially a Black community.
Mr. Fuller, could you explain to the non-white listening audience, and in particular to the Black audience, why it is illogical and outright silly for Black people to use the words the Black community when there is no such thing at all whatsoever under a prison system called white supremacy, sir?
You named it just then, using that word, prison, that term, prison system. A prison system, a prison is not a community. It's a prison. And you say, well, it's a community because there's a prison community. No, that's a word that's out of place. They're just prisoners. They're individual prisoners. I mean, that's why if you give one of them a chance to get out of there, they don't say, I want to go back to my community, except when they get out and find out that that's the only thing that's available to them is the passage back to that. But that's not where they want to be. That's why they try to break out when they can. And they say, hey, you all can call that a community. I didn't never want to be in there in the first place. I'm glad to be out of there. And I don't ever want to go back. All right? So what we call the Black community is the same situation. Most Black people want to get away because the white supremacists set it up that way. They want to get away from other Black people, not because they have so much animosity for other Black people, but the animosity is built up among Black people, just like in any prison. Who do the prisoners turn on? All the time. You hear about it all the time. The guards spend more time breaking up fights in prison than they do keeping the prisoners from trying to escape. As any person that's been a prison guard will tell you. Say, oh yeah, they just run around breaking up fights and arguments and whatnot, because that's what prisoners do. They are weak, and weak people turn on each other in answer to the question. So Black people killing Black people, that's not going to stop until white supremacy stops. So just get ready for it. Everywhere you find a whole bunch of Black people, we're going to be going at each other. Why? We are not a community. We are hostages. We are people who are enslaved. When did slavery end? It didn't. Racism is nothing but slavery. What is slavery? Let's define that word. Mistreatment. Anytime you're being mistreated and you don't know what to do to stop it, you are, by definition, a slave. Anywhere in the world, anytime.
All right.
Alrighty. That should motivate every non-white person who's able to hear that message. Please go to producejustice.com to secure your copy of Legal for Your Juniors Attempt to Counter Racist Materials. I really appreciated Kweku's questions. I think that your question presented a lot of logic that she really had just two options, either to practice deceit or to really just, concede with the logic. And she chose to concede with the logic and admit that racism, white supremacy is global, because your questions are very direct. It's any racial classification with more power than white people. And just really straight to it. Are white people subjugated anywhere? And no, just no white person who's not very, very, very unintelligent. They're gonna know. They're gonna know what's going on. Not just here in so-called U.S., because she was throwing out that a lot, like, U.S. is exporting racism. No such thing. U.S. does not exist. This concept, this area that some of us are located in, is just racism, white supremacy. So she kept saying that this area exports racism. No, it's global. It's everywhere. So-called the U.S. didn't create it. People who call themselves white arranged and produced this concept of racism, white supremacy. So I do hope we get a part 2 with her, and maybe she can wrangle some white people. I highly doubt that part, though. White people have never brought other white people to these sort of discussions that we've had. So, are there any more? I'll go ahead, Koiku.
I was also gonna say I didn't get the chance to ask her directly, and I don't think anybody else did. About, usually I like to ask who's more ignorant about racism, but I believe with the question about why do white people use the term white privilege, even though you admit it's inaccurate, I believe she was trying to kind of like allude to the fact that like white people are ignorant about racism. I think she was definitely saying she was ignorant about racism with her response.
I agree.
Correct.
So that was something that I noticed she was attempting to do. Her answer to it's confusing, but definitely trying to state that white people are ignorant about racism.
Was it I can't remember the place that Donald Trump was talking about when he said well, in terms of white supremacy being global, when he said, I can't remember if he was referring to North Korea or South Korea now, when he said if his famous Rocket Man speech, when he said if Rocket Man doesn't stop what he's doing, blah blah blah, that place will be totally destroyed. Remember that? When he said that place will be totally destroyed if white supremacy is not global. Like, I hear some people talking about other non-white people who have varying degrees of power on this planet as well, but I think that's testament that that white people definitely have more power than non-white people on this planet.
Precisely. Line 22 says, the questions everyone asked were great. Good job, everyone. Still Learning says, she was working against her programming. That's the challenge for most people, which is why so many are confused. Cognitive dissonance in full effect. I remember some of the hosts were mentioning that earlier. Non-white people are supposed to be logical or to examine the belief system, are not supposed to. Just continue to have faith in white people, though. Come around soon. Subtext of you guys are tough. Possibly. And Christine Williams says, I think she was looking for non-white people who are emotional and their responses. No, today we are learning to keep emotions out of the conversations, to ask questions that lead to logical thinking. Yes, that's 100% attempt to counter racist codification right there. Thank you, Miss Williams. That is precisely what we are attempting to do here. And
yeah,
so,
I agree with that, Miss Williams. That was an excellent observation there.
Yeah, and Still Learning says, I bet you this, she won't be able to concentrate in her next meeting. Potentially. Exactly. That's exactly cool. That's why I suggest that she gets some more signs when she is out protesting. That's from Christine Williams.
And just for the record of some non-white people who may listen back to this recording, we're not asking for a confession from people who are classified as white. This is not why we're doing this. This is not to educate white people or to, you know, we're not looking for a hug from white people or or getting them to admit anything. This is done for the purpose of non-white people who may be even more confused about racism into thinking that, you know, there's just a few white people over there who are racist and just, I don't know, like 90% of white people probably are not racist. This is just done to show that, you know, every white person who's able to practice racism probably does, right? It's not like some 10 white people over here in the Klan somewhere or whatever, because a lot of, I'm still having this conversation with a lot of non-white people who are really confused. They're like, no, this white person over here, no, they're not racist. No. I said, how many questions do you ask that white person? You know, yeah, that's what it's done for. It's not done for admission.
Still learning is has really putting the Yoruba mind under his microscope, and I really appreciate your comments. He says she'll be wondering if the other white people will be able to tell what she did by having, in quotations, such a discussion with non-white people. Paranoia. Very, very interesting. And this one, Miss Williams, mainly because they don't want to really tell the truth about white supremacy and how to eliminate it. And lastly, still learning, white people shifted the behaviors of the global body. In 2 years, they can end racism in 15 minutes with a similar campaign. Or at least get it started with a campaign, something.
This is what I was asking her about. What's the most efficient way to get white people to stop practicing racism? Because I suspect that if, you know, there's large swathes of white people who didn't want to practice it, we wouldn't have it anymore. And I think because they are so powerful, there's many things that white people could do to prevent white people from practicing racism if they wanted to do it. I think the record has shown that they're just not going to stop practicing racism. I don't think. I haven't seen any evidence of that yet, but I could be in error.
All righty. So yeah, it's I say looks like folks are done with their notes and comments on the interview. We will be back at 1 p.m. PST with RIPS, Racism in Plain Sight. If folks are able to participate, or tune in for that. And for those who are probably their first time with us, RIPS, Racism in Plain Sight. It's just a program designed to show you what racism is and how it works. It's a collection of people classified as white and people classified as non-white, exhibiting behaviors that display and hopefully motivate us to want to eliminate racism as soon as possible. So you can catch that. And in less than 30 minutes, we'll be live again. So I hope to see you guys with us. If not, maintain. Any folks like to share closing comments before we head out?
Just great counter-racist work, Miss Helen, acquiring the white guest. I hope I can do the same, and I hope the constructive work continues.
Well, pretty much, I hope that she provides racist jokes next time, since she's heard racist jokes from her family member. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciation to the chat. Christine Williams, Still Learning, Line 22, Account for Yahoo. Hope to see you all in the next broadcast happening soon.